It looks like the Walt Disney Company might actually be starting to figure out what their problems are. A new report says Pixar chief Pete Docter believes the company has, quote, drifted too far from its storytelling roots. Let's get into this here. This report comes from us from the New York Times' Brooks Barnes, who described a Zoom interview he conducted with Docter that primarily revolved around the failure of the Elemental movie that released this summer, that Disney is now attempting to spin as a success, given the movie had longer legs at the box office than initially expected. So it's not as bad of a loss as it initially thought it was going to be, but now they're trying to spin it as a success because it just didn't fail as much as it did. So we can look at the numbers here. According to the numbers, the website, Pixar's latest animated release, Elemental, only grossed $29.6 million in its opening weekend at the domestic box office. However, the film went on to earn $154.4 million at the domestic box office in its entire theatrical run. It added on another $333.7 million internationally, predominantly in South Korea, to the tune of $54.4 million in that country, for a global gross of $488.1 million. However, given the film's estimated $200 million production budget, the movie needed to hit at least $500 million to break even after you factor in the movie's marketing budget as well as the box office split that theaters take. So clearly it did not hit that $500 million mark, so it probably lost probably around around $10 million, around there. But according to Barnes, Docter placed the blame on Walt Disney executives who moved Pixar films from theatrical releases to Disney Plus releases. Barnes said this. He said, for a start, Docter said Disney had undercut Pixar as a big screen force by using its films to build the Disney Plus streaming service. He reportedly pointed to Soul, Turning Red, and Luca all being released on Disney Plus instead of getting theatrical releases, and that trained viewers to wait for Pixar films to come to Disney Plus rather than going to see them in theaters. Apparently, humanity is just so easily trained that with just 3 movies, they had completely changed their habits. Docter claims this change shifted the way viewers look at Pixar films. This is what he actually told Barnes. He says, there has been an overall shift in viewing habits as a result of the pandemic, but it's also specific to Disney Plus. We've told people, hey, all of this is going to be available to you on Disney Plus. Not only did Docter claim that Disney executives have screwed the pooch by putting Pixar films on Disney Plus, but he did take some of the blame himself, with Barnes stating, although not saying so directly, Mr. Docter also indicated that Pixar had perhaps drifted too far from its storytelling roots. So there you have it. The moment of clarity has finally finally hit these people. They realize that the stories they're telling no one is interested in, and they've drifted away from their roots in the stories that they're making now. To that point, Docter did inform Barnes, I always felt that Elemental would speak to a lot of people, and I'm so happy it has. But we have also taken another look at the projects we're working on now. What are the kinds of films we want to be making? I really think I want to double down on what allowed us to speak to audiences to begin with. I think Barnes' assertion there, based on this quote, is pretty accurate. Going back to what was really working to begin with. And they kind of point out in the article, Barnes does, that they should get back to kind of these universal stories like Toy Story. What if my toys were actually alive when I wasn't around in the room? Or what happens if there's actual monsters underneath my bed and what are they up to? Things like that. Really interesting there. But these comments shouldn't really be a surprise. Docter made similar comments in an interview with Variety back in June. He told that outlet, we made Soul for the big screen. We looked at every frame. There's so much detail and gorgeous imagery and work that was done that you can't quite appreciate on a smaller screen. However, there was a pandemic going on. On one hand, we were so thankful that there was Disney Plus so that we could release the film and people could see it. Otherwise, it would just sit on a shelf for a year and a half. However, he says in the long run, there's been a bit of a mixed blessing because we've trained audiences that these films will be available for you on Disney Plus, and it's more expensive for a family of 4 to go to a theater when they know they can wait and it'll come out on the platform. Obviously referring to putting the blame on those executives, training people to wait for Disney Plus rather than going to see it in theaters, which I'm not really sure there's a lot of evidence to support that. As we have seen, people are willing to go back to theaters to see event films, and they're really interested in seeing them. But other films, they're just not. They're just not really interested in seeing them. But if it is like a big event film, something like Barbie, something like Top Gun, people are willing to go to the theaters to see it. So, what do you make of Pete Docter's comments here? I'm going to leave it to you guys. I think it's just kind of wild that this is just now they're assessing this. I'm not even sure if he probably already knew this in the first place. They're obviously, Pixar has been mandated by Disney to make a lot of this woke DEI, ESG stuff that they've been churning out. So it was probably well aware of that. But at the same time, I don't even know what I was saying now.
Subscribe for more.